Hello, welcome to Sunday. So, an unusual day for a History News Live. I'm just going to wait for a few people to join us. I can see people in the comments saying hello. Let's just give people a little chance to come and find us. I'm very grateful to everybody who has made it down. And if you are watching this live, welcome. Thank you for finding us on a Sunday. The reason for doing it on a Sunday rather than a Monday is because I'm off on my holidays tomorrow and I will be away for a week. And I'm not sure how good the internet's going to be. So I thought best to do it today rather than risk trying to do it in an unknown location in an unknown internet tomorrow. If you are watching this on the playback, thank you so much. Hopefully, I say this every week, this is not going to be a 3-hour live stream. I'm going to try and stop waffling and keep to time. Let's open up with some hellos. Hello, Liz. Welcome. Thank you for joining. And Casey, my goodness, it's very early on your Monday already. So for you, it is Monday. It's late for my Sunday. It's early for your Monday. Hello, Jessie. Thank you. Happy Sunday to you too. And for those of you who have found my website, thank you so much. And if you have ordered merch, thank you. You may well have been the first person to have ordered the merch, Liz, or it may just be your first merch purchase. I don't know. I could check to see who was first. I think maybe. I'm not sure how though. But thank you very much for checking out the website. And thank you to everybody as well who subscribed to the mailing list. If that is why you have managed to make it here, if that's what notified you, I'm very grateful. I am going to be doing more mailing list stuff, although it has let me know that I do need to get a registered address. So I will also be getting myself a PO box. So that will also be available. People have asked me if I've got a PO box, and I haven't until now. I need one apparently. Never needed one before, but now I do. Oh, we've had a big jump. Hello, Anna. Welcome. Scarlett, OhHaHa. Hello. Felem. Hello from the Netherlands. Thank you. And Tuk, hello. Welcome. Thank you for joining. And I hope I look all right on your TV with my massive head. I'm probably taking up most of the screen, but not for long. I will be starting the slideshow. So as per usual, we do have all of the normal things. We have got some updates. We have some repatriation / decolonization news. We have new news. We do have a ding dong for today, nothing phallic. It is somebody behaving like a ding dong. And we do also have some events and exhibitions. Once again, all of those things are on the opera pin board that is linked in the description box. And you will also find who sent me them with that link on the opera pin board. You will also notice beneath that, there is a numbered list of sources, news items. That is the same list of sources that we will be talking about today. The numbers correspond to the bottom of the slides that you will be seeing on screen. So if it's number one, then it's story number one, and that will hopefully be helpful. Hopefully be hopeful if you wish to check out what we're talking about. I have been sent lots and lots of these articles by you lovely lot, and so I have a number of thank yous. So I think it's time, without further ado, just one thing. Hello, Charlotte in Dorset. That's where I'm going on holiday. So I hope it's sunny where you are. If you could keep it sunny, I'd be much obliged. Thank you very much. I'm assuming you're in charge of weather. I've nominated you as the person in charge. Right, so let us, without further ado, get into the thanks and then into this history news. So I am just going to make that like that. Perfect. So thank you to Yvonne, Jessie, Verity, to Elverta, Felem, Becky, Paige, Marquise, I hope that's how I pronounce your name, to Joseph, to Kay, to my long-suffering husband, Mr. Dr. Cat, to Amy, Mary, Beth, Daniella, name twin Cat, to Kate, Linda, Patricia, Alicia, Jennifer, Anne, Scarlett, OhHaHa, Jayne, Joe, Pandora Snudpuckle, and to Zoe. Thank you all ever so much for taking the time to, there we are, to send me those. It always really makes my day that people have spotted these things, that they have thought of me, and then they have decided to share them. I am always incredibly grateful. So let us jump into the first of the updates. Now, this update is about something that we're going to be covering in far greater detail in the new news, because I am almost 100% sure that most of you will have seen this. It's a dumpster fire, friends. I don't know what's going on, but we're going to talk about what we know so far a little bit later on in this stream. Unsurprisingly, in the wake of some 1,500 objects, the numbers vary, but this one is saying 1,500 object theft at the British Museum, Greece is renewing calls for the return of the Parthenon sculptures. I am unsurprised that this is the way that's gone. So we have an article saying that with details surrounding this spate of thefts, Greek officials are using the scandal, or I think potentially pointing to the scandal, as a way to say that essentially these items should be returned. They are pointing out this clearly that there are security issues at play. This article talks about the museum which has owned the marbles. That word "owns" doing a lot of work. It's held the marbles since they were removed from the Acropolis in the 19th century. The museum has, as we know, repeatedly denied Greece's requests for the relics to be repatriated. This, however, there is a campaign that has gained momentum, and the Greek culture minister has said, quote, "The lost, theft, deterioration of objects from a museum's collection is an extremely serious and particularly sad event. In fact, when this happens from within, beyond any moral and criminal responsibility, a major question arises regarding the credibility of the museum organisation itself." She goes on to say, "The Ministry of Culture is following the development of the issue with great attention." One of the big things for many, many years that was said was these items need to stay in Britain, in the British Museum, etc., because we can't trust that they will be safe and they will be properly preserved if we allow them to go back. Well, as we're going to find out, it doesn't seem like they're going to have much of a leg to stand on there. Unsurprisingly, further update, Nigeria has also redoubled and doubled down on their demands for the return of the Benin Bronzes. I am not surprised by this, and anybody who is writing articles or who is complaining that they are cashing in on this to make a political point, they have to do everything. If I was in their position, I would be suggesting they do the exact same thing. And I think that it's really disingenuous to say that this is somehow the wrong way to play it. I think it's really disingenuous to try and allege that if there was an artifact or an item that was seen as being integral to British history that was being held somewhere else in the world, that they wouldn't do the exact same thing to try and get it back. So we have the director of Nigeria's National Commission for Museums and Monuments saying, quote, "It's shocking to hear that the countries and museums that have been telling us that the Benin Bronzes would not be secure in Nigeria have thefts happening there." There we go. As I said, continuing, they are the subject of loot. They were illegally taken out of the country. It is irrespective whether they are safe there. That's not an issue. The issue is these are stolen artifacts. They should be returned to Nigeria, to the communities that they belong to. Absolutely. It doesn't really matter in regards to this whether they've lost some kind of moral standpoint or proposed moral standpoint to keep hold of them. They had no moral standpoint to keep hold of them. So these thefts are just an extra side of sauce, if you will. Yes, so the numbers have differed, and we will be getting into that when we get to the new news. But this story, friends, I'm not going to even sugarcoat it. I have no idea what's gone on here. Something, and it's more than we know, for sure. I'm very confused how this is. We'll get to it. We still have more updates and indeed new news. This is going, because I'm seeing this as a contemporary issue, it's going to be a little bit further on in our new news. Further repatriations now. We're on to repatriations and the call of Southeast Asian countries are demanding the Denver Museum return looted artifacts. These are officials from Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand. They say the Denver Art Museum has stolen antiquities from their countries, and they believe they should be returned. We are told officials from Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand have formally asked the Denver Art Museum in Colorado to return 8 pieces that were looted from temples and historical sites. My husband just brought me tea. Thank you very much. I shall wet my whistle. So representatives from the museum have apparently never responded to these calls. And on top of this, the officials are pointing out that this museum have still got hold of a bunch of pieces that they got from Emma Bunker. We have heard her name before, and that is because she's a notorious art dealer who was named in criminal and civil cases for her role in smuggling artifacts. She was an associate of Douglas Latchford, another name that keeps popping up like a bad penny. And he was accused of trading looted art relics from Cambodia for decades. Latchford died in 2020, but he was charged in the US with wire fraud, smuggling, and other crimes associated with antiquities. The question then is, why is this museum, Denver Art Museum, a public institution with all the responsibilities and benefits that go along with that, not ensuring the integrity of its own collection? The accusations here don't involve mistakes made in the colonial era or, frankly, even in the 20th century. These were actions that were taken in 2016, 2018, and 2021. To learn that the museum seems to be taking a while to return those objects is kind of mysterious, we are told, and this person says that they do worry. Special Agent David Keller, who is a Department of Homeland Security investigator for stolen cultural antiquities, has told The Guardian that the reputations of Bunker and Latchford are widely known. Quote, for anyone to be surprised today would be, I think, lying, because with Bunker and Latchford, everybody knows. A spokesperson from the museum added that the Denver Art Museum said the museum had removed 5 pieces donated by Bunker and had been working with US officials to return artifacts that were received from these individuals since 2020. Quote, the museum is collaborating with the US Department of Justice to determine next steps in getting these objects to their nations of origin. But the museum in 2020 did defend its association with Bunker in response to the post-investigation of her. Oh yes, my husband is very good. He's very wonderful. He looks after me incredibly well. He's a very, very good man. I've not made a cup of tea unless I'm left to my own devices. I have not made a cup of tea if he's in the house. He is, and I also don't cook. So essentially, if I'm fed and watered, it's all down to him. Thank you, Sandy. That's very kind of you. Thank you very much for the super chat and for your very kind comment as well. I do try my best. I did, however, for those of you who saw my video on Henry VIII's love life, I did make an absolute clanger right at the end, and I have to this moment no idea how it happened that I listed at the very end of the video. We are talking the moment before I go into talking about, final questions and all of the stuff about where to find me. At the very end of the video, I talk about Henry's date of death, and I don't know what came over me, but in both the script and then the words and then the edit, I said that his date that he became king was the date that he died. I don't know how I did it. Utterly baffled. Had been speaking just moments earlier about the attempted coup against Catherine Parr in 1546, and then suddenly he's dying in 1509. That math ain't mathing. So if anybody who did see that and did spot it, I did put a pin a comment. I no clue apart from dyslexia, not a clue. Oh, well, we could pretend. We could. I mean, maybe I should have pretended that it was. It was every now and again I'm going to put in a little trick, and there'll be a prize for anybody who spots it. I mean, maybe I should just start doing that with mistakes, because then I can fob them off. But no, absolutely a mistake. Apologies. And I can't promise it won't happen again, because numbers and I are not friends. Anyway, on with repatriations. Now, this is sort of an update, because it's a kind of story that we have heard before. It's about things being repatriated and then them being found to be forgeries. And this is not the first time we've heard this, and I don't know quite how far the reach of this is going to end up going. This is May 2023. The Greek Ministry of Culture rejoices the return of a bunch of objects, including, presumably, this sculpture of Alexander the Great. A gentleman by the name of Stephen Lehmann first saw this sculpture in the German state of Saxony-Anhalt. He's an archaeologist, now retired, and he was a professor at university. He was curious about this well-preserved work, and he said, quote, "I was there, I looked at it, and I thought it was blatantly fake. That this was an original was out of the question." I mean, that's bold, but okay. I'm assuming that there's a reason behind that, probably because of the state in which it was kept and how well preserved it was. So he searched the museum catalogue for provenance, but to no avail. He then asked the museum point blank, got no answers, repeated requests unsuccessfully. He says, quote, "Museums are never amused, that's clear. When important pieces on display in their main hall are called into question, I can understand why." But he continued to call the sculpture a fake. And he then also accused the museum of allowing itself to be misused as a laundry machine. The Winkleman Society promptly sued him for libel. Wow. So it's getting serious. However, at that time, the court did not address the question that really interested Lehmann. Is the sculpture genuine? But that would have been impossible, because immediately after the exhibition, the sculpture disappeared. Okay. It was considered lost for a long time. When a Swiss collector sent him the supposedly ancient bust of the Emperor Augustus for examination, quote, "When you look at the details, you also have doubts as to whether this is really fake. It's perfectly done, after all. It's already masterful." He had the sculpture scanned by computer tomography. Counterfeiters, as the assumption goes, have ancient coins melted down to cast new pieces from them, so the metal composition would be right. The material is really 2,000 years old, but apparently this depiction of Augustus did not stand up to scrutiny because of the degree of corrosion. It didn't line up, so it was provable, he claims, that this had been cast more recently. He thinks it's from a counterfeiting workshop of someone known as the Spanish Master, who has yet to be identified. This is very scandalous. Whoever they are, they create busts of ancient rulers and give them this beautiful patina. The facial features are very well preserved, as if by magic. And then, of course, the counterfeiters create pieces that are currently in demand on the art and antiquities music. Regarding the value of archaeological objects, bronze statues are in the premier category. They're something very special, and of course, they do draw the most attention. So, feels something's gone on there, and one wonders, because it's not the first time forgeries have been discussed, one wonders how rife this is. On with repatriation, I was sent this a few times in various forms. We have here the article, the title of which is "The majority of the Smithsonian's collection of human brain specimens was gathered without consent, reports find." This is vile. Most of the specimens held by the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History were gathered without consent. Quote, "The vast majority of the remains appear to have been gathered without consent from the individuals or their families, by researchers preying on people who were hospitalized, poor, or lacked immediate relatives to identify or bury them. In other cases, collectors, anthropologists, and scientists dug up burial grounds and looted graves. Most of the 255 brains held in the museum's collection were removed upon death from people of colour, including 57 from Black people who died in the United States, many obtained through unethical practices. There were also brains from 23 Filipinos and 49 poor Germans, whose bodies were unclaimed between 1908 and 1912. This is Burke and Hare level territory. The brains are part of the museum's collection of, quote, at least 30,700 human bones and other body parts. One of the largest in the world, but representing an unknown number of people. We are told when the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act was passed in 1990, the law meant that the Smithsonian only had to inform Native American, Alaska Native, or Native Hawaiian communities about the remains in its collection. So Dunga and Healy found relatives of Mary Sarah, who had no idea that Sarah's brain had been taken physically by a physician after her death in 1933 and mailed to the museum. The dates of this, it's repulsive whenever it happens, but how late this is happening? Out of at least 268 brains, the reporters found that the officials at the museum had repatriated only 4 of them to descendants or cultural heirs. In April, the Smithsonian Secretary announced the creation of a task force to address the disposition of human remains. Quote, what was once standard in the museum field is no longer acceptable. That is a no S Sherlock moment, I think. We acknowledge and apologise for the pain our historical practices have caused people, their families and their communities, and I look forward to the conversations this initiative will generate in helping us perform our cutting-edge research in a manner that is ripe with scholarship and conforms to the highest ethical standard. I know that so much of this has been based on racist attitudes, that these brains were really people of colour to demonstrate the superiority of white brains. So I understand that that is just really uncomfortable. I think it's important for me as a historian to say that all the remains, all the brains need to be returned if possible and treated in the best possible way. The reporters at the Post were told that he knew absolutely nothing about the Smithsonian's brain collection prior to becoming the secretary in 2019 and learned about it only in 2022 after the adoption of a formal policy on ethical returns for human remains and other objects taken without consent. So the Smithsonian is a sprawling institution. You know, we're talking 21 museums, research facilities, National Zoo, National Museum of Natural History. Having an idea as secretary coming in of what is there, it sounds like we're now on the right path, but there is a side to heritage, and when people get a bit sort of blur or it's wokery gone mad, and that's one of the reasons why I did ban the word woke in my comments, to talk about the decolonization of the museum or the academy or whatever else it might be. It's stuff like this, and I think that although this is an historical practice, that doesn't negate the necessity to make right in whatever way is possible. And let's be clear, you break a plate, you can stick it back together, but you'll always see the cracks. You can't, it's always a bit broken. You screw up a piece of paper, you can always see the wrinkles, but you can make good as best you can. I hope that's what they're trying to do. I mean, to be honest, I'm not, I'm prepared to benefit of doubt into an extent that, yeah, that the at the start in 2019, maybe the big left hand doesn't know what the little right hand is doing, maybe. And then, of course, we did have a lot of shutdown. Some were coming in 2019 and then stuff being sorted out now. Maybe if we're being kind, we have to kind of almost take out 2020 to 2022. So in that respect, the new secretary is acting relatively quickly. However, this is not a conversation that began an institution in 2019. This is a conversation that began a lot earlier than that. So I'm prepared to give grace to a certain degree, but really, I mean, honestly, it's not my place to give that grace because it's not my ancestors. So it's not really up to me to give grace. There are lots more articles to check out on this. We have one from LBC, Smithsonian apologising for owning more than 200 brains belonging to ethnic minority people without consent. The Washington Post has done a really in-depth look. Definitely worth checking that out. That's, of course, it's all linked below. And then there's also another article that I got from CNN. The Smithsonian is apologising for how it amassed its vast collection of human remains. I think also it's not simply apologising for how it amassed it. It is looking to divest itself of it as well. Yes, kintsugi is a way of mending a plate, but you will always see the crack. It might make it more beautiful, but you will always see the crack. This is an article penned by Zahi Hawass, who is an Egyptian Egyptologist and archaeologist, also worked for the Egyptian government in that role as kind of the state archaeologist. And he's written an article about returning the Rosetta Stone to Egypt. In this article, and I did plan to link it, there was a link to a petition whereby people who are, I believe, able to go onto the YouGov petitioning thing and sign could essentially say that they want the Rosetta Stone back. Unfortunately, this link and the petition has run out of its time, and I couldn't find if they've started a new petition, but unfortunately it didn't get the signatures. I was just sent this article this week, and the petition closed earlier in the month. So hopefully a new petition will be issued and we can put some momentum behind it and see where that can go. Yeah, that's exactly what I. There has absolutely been a change in what is viewed as acceptable. I do understand that, but in recognizing the fact it's not simply enough to go, like you're saying, well, we won't do it now. No, no. Of course you won't do it now because it's vile and disrespectful and degrading. But what you also aren't going to do is you aren't going to pretend that the stuff that happened before can just be swept over. I have no idea, but one does the different numbers that have previously come out. The fact that in 2019 the incoming secretary wasn't aware of the remains and their provenance or their number is, yeah, I'm concerned by that too. I'm concerned by that too. I mean, the thing is, I think that in many ways an online community could offer that. The capacity for things to be shot in all directions, photographed in all directions, and then effectively made into a 3D model. The way in which VR is developing at a rate of knots, I think that this repository, this storehouse, particularly things do degrade as well. There are things that you would never be able to touch. However, perhaps if we found a way to map them, you could even touch them in the virtual space. There we go. Yes, digital museum. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's the way to lean into that tech would be really, really useful. And then it becomes the issue becomes about accessibility, because this is not a reason to go, well, we've digitized the Benin Bronzes, so now we haven't got to send them back to Nigeria, because that's not how it works. In the same way that saying, well, they're on display, they're freely available, so you can come and see whenever you like. Okay, pay for my plane ticket to come over from Nigeria, put me up in London, in one of the most expensive cities on the face of the planet, and then feed me while I'm taking the time to come and see it. Then we can talk. Oh, I've got to check that out. Time Team has one for the newer site. Interesting. Interesting. You can also have a 3D scan and it can be printed to scale anytime you want a keychain. You want a keychain of Nefertiti, boom, 3D print it. You want it to be a life-size thing to sit in your living room, boom, 3D print it. And also, let's not have to pay image rights for it either. let's find other ways. Let's find other ways to fund that. Let's make it accessible and usable by everybody at no cost. So we are now hopping on to the new news. A new fossil ape from an 8.7 million year old site in Turkey is challenging long accepted ideas of human origins, and it's adding weight to the theory that ancestors of African apes and humans evolved in Europe before migrating to Africa between 9 and 7 million years ago. The findings of this new study were published in Communications Biology. They were co-authored by an international team led by Professor David Beggan at the University of Toronto, and Professor Ayla Sevrim Erol at Ankara University. Quote, our findings further suggest that hominins not only evolved in Western and Central Europe, but spent over 5 million years evolving there and spreading to the East Mediterranean before eventually dispersing into Africa, probably as a consequence of changing environments and diminishing forests. The members of this radiation, to which Anadolovius, that's the name of this homonym, belongs, are currently only identified in Europe and Anatolia. They have found several well-preserved partial craniums since 2015, which includes most of the facial structure and the front part of the brain case. We are told that this new evidence supports the hypothesis that hominins originated in Europe and dispersed into Africa, along with many other mammals between 9 and 7 million years ago, although it does not definitively prove it. For that, we need to find more fossils from Europe and Africa between 8 and 7 million years ago to establish a definitive collection between the two groups. So we will have to wait and see, because no doubt that study will be ongoing and will be happening. And I look forward to seeing what we learn about it. We have been told that rising seas and a great southern star are part of Aboriginal oral traditions that stretch back more than 12,000 years. The article says, and this article, I haven't shared all of it, but the article does mention genocide and acts of colonial violence against Aboriginal people. So if that's something that will upset you, perhaps don't click on the article or read selectively. The question they ask, how long do you think stories can be passed down generation to generation? Hundreds of years? Thousands of years? Today, they published, or on this day, so August 13th, they published new research in the Journal of Archaeological Science, demonstrating that traditional stories from Tasmania have been passed down for more than 12,000 years, and they are using multiple lines of evidence to show it. And all of that is in this article, so do check out those multiple lines of evidence. But what they say is, through these lines of evidence, that Palawa stories have been passed down for more than 12 millennia. They find the only example in the world of an oral tradition describing a star's position as it would have appeared in the sky over 10,000 years ago. Our investigation of colonial records that record traditional systems of knowledge has demonstrated a powerful cross-cultural way of better understanding deep human history. This also recognises the immense value of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander traditions today. On that note of digitisation, That's a fair point. That is a fair point. I do think there's always going to be, though, in the same way that when theatres put on their productions or allow their productions to go into cinemas or even onto viewer on demand services, streaming services, whatever, it doesn't diminish the desire to go and see it in the flesh, so to speak. If anything, it ups it. So I mean, obviously, it is up to the individual institutions, the individual nation states. I would say it would be a mistake to paywall digital items or digital copies of their items, because I think that, say, for example, the Benin Bronzes were back in Nigeria, all together, displayed in a way that was culturally sensitive, as that community finds it. Experiencing a Benin Bronze through VR in your own home is going to be incredible. But I think all that's going to do is whet your appetite to be like, right, how do I get out there to see it in person? And how do I do that? That's my interpretation, but it's obviously not my job or business to tell other people how to boost their tourism. I'm of the opinion that if you wet the whistle for free, then actually that would drive tourism further. But I'm not a professional at the economics of tourism. Oral tradition is an extremely underrated form of history. And do you know, it's actually one of the reasons I list this as being prehistoric. I list these finds as being prehistoric. And there's something that I do find, it's the correct terminology within academia to use for these periods, because it's before written history. But I find myself being very uncomfortable with using the word prehistory as a catch-all, because there are histories that exist before, obviously, as we're seeing here, and does using the word prehistory in many ways ignore, devalue, or pretend it's somehow lesser when you have these oral traditions of history that are being passed down? I don't know. It's something that I do think about, though. And 8,000. Yes, that's Hampton Court. They have done a walkthrough. I think that is something. There's not a lot of there's some very obviously some tragedies that happened in the pandemic, but people becoming more creative with sharing ideas and spaces and engaging across distances, or not even very far distances, I think is a net benefit. I think in that regard, that's one benefit that has come out of the horror show that was the pandemic. And that's the other thing. I think as well that there, if you can map the surface of something, you can make something, an experience that's not a tactile experience, into a tactile experience. I remember, I probably told this story. I remember that I was working at the tower and I was in costume, and I saw a lady with her friend, and she was visually impaired. And I realized that I was probably one of the very few things that was a hyper tactile experience for her. So I kind of explained what I was wearing and let her touch my clothing. And, you know, the more we can do that, and the more that things can be audio described and they can be tactile and all the rest of it. And with the new stuff of the history of smell that they're working on, this could be a really interesting uh, way of mashing things all together and actually having an experience that you couldn't have in real life, like being able to walk through Versailles and go back into a time, into a royal court, and smell the smells, etc. That I think that VR and these sorts of experiences can provide something that is highly and wholly different from in-person heritage, but I don't think it diminishes in-person heritage. I think it only boosts it. So we have so my husband just sent me a message saying that in paleontology and paleoanthropology, prehistory would be before written records of history. And then he's gone. So where my dad is from, prehistory ended in 1945. His dad's from just outside of Bristol. Just, he's just being such a shady. He's so shady. Oh, I'm gonna tell his dad that he said that. Oh dear, I'm gonna get him in trouble. Right. Oh, okay. An 8,500-year-old village has been discovered beneath an Albanian lake, and it is said to be the oldest known in Europe. Scientists have found probably one of the oldest sedentary communities in Europe and sheltered behind a fortress of defensive spikes, and it was found beneath one of the oldest lakes in the world. This is Lake Ohrid or Ohrid in Albania. These findings are made by Swiss and Albanian archaeologists with the help of professional divers, and they indicate that this place, Lynn, served as a hub for the development of agriculture, craftsmanship, and fishing. It's the oldest lakeside village discovered to date, and it's even older than similar ones that have been found throughout Italy and throughout Europe. Oh yes, and he's also said that what I'm actually talking about is augmented reality rather than virtual reality. I do mean augmented reality. I think, but I'm thinking of it in a kind of VR headset form, which of course augmented reality is. When they start figuring out, touchy, smelly, masky, computer living thing, that those were all words. Those were all words. Quote, archaeological sites in lakes of the southern Balkans provide an excellent opportunity to investigate rich archives of societal and environmental change in the cradle of European farming. That is an excellent question. Whenever I talk about an exhibition, I always try and find the accessibility documents. But in terms of who's having those conversations and who is publishing on it, let me look into it and find out, because I think that the more input and discussion those kinds of scholars can have, the better. So this beautiful picture here of which was taken in 2023, showing a diver searching for archaeological material. One of the archaeologists involved said that building their village on stilts, which is what they did, was a complex task, very complicated, very difficult. And it's important to understand why these people made the choice. They've been working at the site for 4 years, uncovering seeds, plants, bones of wild and domesticated animals, and they have stumbled on a new mystery now to try and solve. The discovery of palisades suggests the settlement was fortified with thousands of spiked planks used as defensive barricades, but they don't know why this level of defense was needed by the villagers. They estimate that roughly 100,000 spikes driven into the bottom of the lake off of Lynn, and they have called this discovery a real treasure trove for researchers. According to the archaeologists, it's going to take another 2 decades for this settlement to be fully explored and studied, and for final conclusions to be drawn. So I'm sure stuff will come out little by little, but 20 years from now, we should know more. Maybe not everything, but more. I also find the underwater archaeology very interesting. However, do I need to caveat it? I'm going to anyway. I think it needs to be done and we need to ensure that it's being done by actually professional people using appropriate safety protocols. This is not these. I don't believe that any archaeological site ever should become the playground for billionaires. Shouldn't be happening for a number of reasons. Principally because it's very, very dangerous. Secondarily, because lots of people flapping around down there damages the site, alters how the water is moving around it, and additionally, the more people that know, we need to keep some of these sites secret. I think all of them. The more people that know where a site is, the more chance there is of salvagers, maybe, but let's also remember scavengers going down there too. I think also if something is effectively a burial site for hundreds and hundreds of people, that's not a place for tourism. When it could also be so dangerous. So yeah, I am subtweeting OceanGate. I think it was a tragedy that was wholly avoidable. Archaeologists have revealed evidence of a British festival from 6,500 years ago. I'm sure this has been put out because we've got Reading on this weekend, last weekend. We're in musical festival times, and archaeologists have discovered evidence that's going to apparently shed light on the distant origins of British identity, an ancient festival site. It's long been known that the word Britain is derived from a Celtic word meaning the painted ones, almost certainly reflecting a prehistoric predilection for body painting. So, thus, me being tattooed, it's probably not fine, but it's what I've done. However, there's never been much potential archaeological evidence for the cultural tradition until now. Investigations of a 6,500-year-old ceremonial prehistoric site in the northwest of England have identified the largest collection of pieces of red ochre ever found in Britain. They were recovered from a Stone Age site near Carlisle, and I'm assuming that's where we're going to. Evidence suggests that it acted as an important finishing base during the peak of the salmon spring run, possibly in mid-April. It's like these fishing operations were carried out with special triple-pronged fishing spears, so like tridents, and with bows and arrows. We've got evidence of Stone Age manufacture on the site as well. We are told that it's impossible to know how many people participated in exploiting the spring salmon run and took part in any associated ceremonies and rituals, but there are indications of the scale of what is likely to have been an important annual event. The flintworking debris, so there's over 300,000 fragments from just 12% of the island which has been excavated, suggests that many hundreds of arrows and other artifacts were being made there during each gathering in the late Mesolithic period. And apparently the site was intensely used over a period of some 800 years. This is by far the largest such discovery. There are, however, finds in other parts of the UK that demonstrate that red ochre was used by prehistoric Britons not only in and before the Mesolithic, but also in the Neolithic, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. The Mesolithic Carlisle red ochre that they found complements latest surviving linguistic and historical evidence to suggest that body painting was almost certainly a British tradition, a tradition that seems to have led to the territory being called Britain, i.e. the land of the painted people. The earliest recorded occurrences of the name for Britain, Pretanicae, with a P, Pretanicae, which is written down by a Marseille-based Greek explorer called Pytheas in the 4th century BC. He visited Britain and learnt the Celtic name of the territory's people, the Prytani, and then rendered the name as Pretanicae, which subsequently evolved to Britannia, so it comes from the painted people. Julius Caesar in the mid-1st century mentions the inhabitants of Britain have a tradition of painting themselves, and the people of Scotland were also called the painted people, the Picti or the Picts. So everybody is covered in paint, dancing in a field. Sounds like a good old time. Sounds like a good old time. I bought a bag of Dorset knobs, and then I was going to give them to my friend as a joke, and we didn't see her for ages, and then the knobs went off. I didn't even get to try a Dorset knob, so I might have to buy a bag and have to go and buy a bag of knobs. This is my job. Go and buy a bag of knobs. Oh dear. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's some sharp stuff around. I'm sure everyone had a lovely time. We have got more news about Ötzi. Is how I believe it's pronounced. I apologise if I am incorrect about that, but I believe it's Ötzi the Iceman. They have reevaluated his DNA, and that has changed the way in which we think that he looks. So this new DNA extraction is providing deeper insights into the history of these human remains. For example, his appearance, he died when he's around 45, was much like how the mummified remains look today, which I'm not going to show because obviously they are human remains. So the skin is very dark and it doesn't have a lot of hair. And if by looking at the genome, it does show that actually was perhaps genetic rather than something to do with the way in which the remains were preserved. The genome also showed an increased chance of obesity and diabetes. Before now, Ötzi has conventionally been depicted with long, unkempt hair and pale skin, although these interpretations did arise from genetic sequencing back in 2012. So the new genome says that he probably had very little hair on his head due to male pattern baldness, and probably had much darker skin. So we have Albert Zink, who is the mummy's researcher in Italy, saying, quote, "I was surprised, but when I think about it, it explains much better why the mummy looks like it does." China's ancient water pipe network shows that there was a communal effort despite there being no evidence of centralized state authority. A system of ceramic water pipes has been unearthed in China. These are Neolithic or are made by Neolithic people. They were doing complex engineering feat without there being a centralized state authority to sort it all out. This is a study that's been published in Nature Water, and they talk about there being a network of ceramic water pipes and drainage ditches that date back 4,000 years. This is a period known as the Longshan period. This network must have taken cooperation among the community in order to build and maintain this system, although there is no evidence of there being any centralized authority. We are told that these pipes represent an advanced level of technology for the time. There is some variety in decoration and style. Each pipe segment is about 20 to 30 centimeters in diameter and about 30 to 40 centimeters long. Segments are slotted into each other to transport water over long distances. Researchers don't know how these people organized and divided this labor amongst themselves and how they maintained the infrastructure of it. This kind of communal coordination would also be necessary to build earthen walls and the moats surrounding the village as well. The drainage system is unique from water systems elsewhere in the world at the time. It drains rain and floodwater from monsoons, and it differs from other Neolithic systems, many of which were used for sewerage, water drainage, and other purposes. So, interesting. Very interesting. that is, definitely the case, that we are by nature, or we should by nature be, social creatures. Collaboration and community is the most natural. Sharing communally. What I'm saying is communism is the natural state of humanity. Don't come for me. Don't come for me. We have ancient metal cauldrons giving us clues about what people ate in the Bronze Age. Archaeologists have been drawing conclusions about how ancient tools were used by the people who crafted them based on written records and context clues. But with dietary practices, they have had to make assumptions about what was eaten and how it was prepared. There's been a new study published in iScience that's analysed protein residue from ancient cooking cauldrons to find that the people of the Caucasus ate deer, sheep, goats, and members of the cow family in the period between 3700 and 2900 BCE. Quote, "It's really exciting to get an idea of what people were making in these cauldrons so long ago. This is the first evidence we have of preserved proteins of a feast. It's a big cauldron. They were obviously making large meals, not just for individual families. They collected 8 residue samples from 7 cauldrons that were recovered from burial sites in the Caucasus region, which sits between the Caspian and Black Seas. So they have retrieved proteins from blood, muscle tissue, and milk. The radiocarbon dating is what allowed them to date when the cauldrons were in use. These cauldrons show wear and tear from being used and signs of extensive repair as well. They are thus suggested to be valuable, requiring great skill to make and acting as important symbols of wealth or social position. We are told, quote, "We would like to get a better idea of what people across this ancient steppe were doing and how food preparation differed from region to region throughout the time. Since cuisine is such an important part of culture, studies like this one may help us to understand the cultural connections between different regions." Quote, "If proteins are preserved on these vessels, there's a good chance they are preserved on a wide range of other prehistoric metal artifacts. We still have a lot to learn, but this opens up the field in a really dramatic way." It absolutely is, and I'm seeing in five years' time there is going to be the ancient steps cauldron cookbook that stick a pin in that. It's done. Stew is fabulous. Good soup. Researchers have extracted ancient DNA from a 2,900-year-old clay brick. This is researchers from the University of Oxford. They have been studying a brick that originates from the ancient city of Kalhu. This is an Assyrian city which is located in Iraq's Nineveh Governorate. What they have found, they've got these around the city, numerous inscriptions have given researchers insights into the re-emergence of Kalhu, with one inscription describing the palace. It's, quote, "The palace of cedar, cypress, juniper, boxwood, mulberry, pistachio wood, and tamarisk. For my royal dwelling and for my lordly pleasure for all time, I founded therein. Beasts of the mountain and of the seas, of white limestone and alabaster, I fashioned and set them up on its gates." Sounds beautiful. This, around 2,900 years ago, a brick master prepared a clay brick for this palace's construction, from which researchers from the university have extracted and sequenced ancient DNA by using novel aDNA analysis. They've managed to distinguish 34 separate taxonomic plant groups. So they've got cabbage, heather, birch, umbellifers, and cultivated grasses. The study is being done by an interdisciplinary group, including Assyriologists, archaeologists, biologists, and geneticists. They have juxtaposed their discoveries with contemporary botanical data from Iraq and from historical Assyrian depictions of plants. A spokesperson from the University of Oxford said, quote, "Because of the inscription on the brick, we could allocate the clay to a relatively specific period of time in a particular region, which means the brick serves as a biodiversity time capture of information regarding a single site and its surroundings. In this case, it provides researchers with a unique access to the ancient Assyrians." Pretty cool. The remains of a 2,200-year-old giant panda and tapir who was sacrificed have been found near a Chinese emperor's tomb. This is the Chinese emperor Wen, who we are told sacrificed the subjects of the Emperor Wen sacrificed a great panda and a tapir and buried their remains near their ruler's tomb. The discovery of the tapir skeleton apparently surprised archaeologists, as it suggests that the animal, who are no longer in China, may have lived in the region during ancient times. There are 5 species of tapir alive today. The new found remains appear to be from the Malayan tapir, known as the Malay tapir or Asian tapir. These can be about 6 to 8 feet long, and they can weigh between 550 to 740 pounds, the adults having a distinct black and white pattern. Archaeologists excavated 23 pits containing ancient animal sacrifices near the tomb of Emperor Wen between August 2021 and August 2022. In addition to the skeletons of the giant panda and the tapir, they also found the remains of gals, which is a species of bison, tigers, green peafowl, also known as peacocks, yaks, golden snub-nosed monkeys, and takins, which are apparently goat-like creatures. This is among other animals that were buried near Wen's tomb. So this is the first physical evidence of a tapir living in China at this time, which corroborates the things that are written in ancient documents, which do hint at their presence in the country. This finding is being hailed as proof that tapirs did once roam that part of China. Quote, "Prior to this new discovery, there was no evidence of the tapir inhabiting." My husband has just quoted Frozen in a text message. He's just texted me going, "and a chicken with the face of a monkey," which is a line from Frozen. It's this very this is why it lasts 3 hours, because he's he's interjecting with humor. So Emperor Wen's tapir, we are told, is the first solid evidence of the tapir's presence in ancient China in historical times. The people who did this publication did reach out to the archaeologists for comment, but did not receive response at the time of publication. The metal detectorists are up to it again. They're finding things. These ones are in Wales. 2,000-year-old gold treasure from an Iron Age tribe has been found by metal detectorists in Wales. These look fabulous. Look at them. The collection of gold coins. They were found strewn across an open field in Anglesey, which is an island in Wales. This is the first time the Iron Age currency has been found in the country. These are 15 well-preserved coins, which are thought to be minted sometimes between 60 BCE and 20 BCE. He's now sending me dad jokes, going, if there aren't tapir there anymore, does it mean that their time in China has tapered off? Anyway, these are, we're told, highly stylized coins derived from the Macedonian coins of Philip II. It's thought they were used by the Korealtavi tribe who inhabited this area where they were found during the Iron Age. They were uncovered between July 2021 and March 2022. And the detectorists did what they had to do. They did the right thing, which is notify the Portable Antiquities Scheme. It is the law to do so. And it was discovered and declared to be treasure, unsurprisingly. One of the detectorist Lloyd Roberts said that finding a gold stater was always number one on my wish list. We're just delighted to discover this was the first hoard of Iron Age gold coins ever found in Wales. Finding coins from this time period in Wales is incredibly rare because Iron Age tribes in the region didn't normally use outside currency, based on previous research indicating the island was an important religious centre. That it was that from the 1st century BCE to the 1st century CE. But these experts think that these coins might have been used as offerings to the gods, according to the statement. Quote, this hoard is a fantastic example of the rich archaeological landscape that exists in northwestern Wales. While the immediate vicinity of the find did not yield any clues as to the find's origin, the find spot lies in an area known prehistory and early Roman activity and helps to increase our understanding of this region. The coin collection will be going on display at Oriel Mon, which is a museum and gallery in Anglesey. Just looking to see, I can't see any with holes. I can't see, but I mean, there are like some of them have got little chips at the top, which theoretically, if it's been worn down a bit around the edge. Yeah. The guy in charge of managing their lights would be the tapiest taper. Excellent. Excellent. Don't encourage him. Don't encourage him. He's got brave enough as it is. I have feelings. People on social media have feelings about the discovery of a Hecate figurine. Just pop it up there, and the fact that it's come from Batman University in Turkey. That's exceptional. A group of archaeologists from Batman University have found an ancient Greek goddess statue of Hecate during their dig at the historical site of Kalendaris. This old Greek city was once a bustling port and a strong fortress. Kalendaris has been giving up its secrets bit by bit. They have found the remains of a Roman bathhouse, and now they have also found this 2,300-year-old statue. The figurine's age, we are told, provides a remarkable glimpse into a time long gone, offering us a tangible connection to history's embrace. We, of course, last time talked about the discovery of there's been some frequent things about Medusa as well. So we have got Medusa and Hecate. I'm not going to say it. If you know, you know. The head of the excavation has described this figurine saying, quote, it's a figurine that's about 20 centimeters tall and has 3 heads. She has a temple in the ancient city, and Kalendaris is mentioned in an inscription as one of the cities that participate in the competitions held every 5 years for Hecate. So, there we go. From Hecate to being literally goth AF. I am planning on doing a t-shirt. I've got this idea to do a t-shirt referencing the fact that Queen Victoria was goth AF, but I've got to figure out how to make it. And once I figure it out, it's going to be the coolest image. I've got it in my head. I just need to make it I need to make it be on the page, and I'm figuring out how to do that. But once it's done, trust and believe, that's going to look really cool. Excavations have uncovered a Gothic cemetery filled with ornate jewellery. This is a 2,000-year-old Gothic cemetery, and this was in Poland. The cemetery was first identified by Olaf Popkiewicz, who is, I've pronounced that terribly, I apologise, an archaeologist and content creator who runs a YouTube channel with 65,000 followers. I will go and find out more about that YouTube channel. How cool. Traces of the site were found during a preliminary study, and then clearly more has been found since. Archaeologists found 50 ancient burials that date from the 4th century CE, which is a period where this region was inhabited by the Goths. They are referring to the Germanic ethnic group, not the people that I used to hang out with in Camden when I was 15. They significantly contributed to the decline of Western Roman Empire and the dawn of medieval Europe. If you are familiar with the play Titus Andronicus, they were fighting the Goths at that time. Excavations have uncovered numerous high-stakes grave goods, including 2 silver necklaces, 2 fibulae, a necklace made from silver beads, jewellery with a snake motif, and a perfectly preserved urn. We are told that this constitutes, quote, only a small fragment of the site's area, estimated to be 2.4 acres, which I think is big. Unfortunately, the conditions of a large part of the cemetery means that urgent excavations are needed to help save and preserve the site. Previous studies in the area have found a Gothic settlement near the village of Ossi with well-preserved spatial arrangement of objects that date from the 4th century CE. So, let's see what comes out of there. There is perhaps evidence of the existence of a Roman fossil hunter. Archaeologist Matt Edwards is showing off a plesiosaur, bit of plesiosaur vertebrae, I think. Yes. So the plesiosaur became extinct 66 million years ago. The plesiosaurs are fossils that were also found quite famously by Mary Anning, who is a history hero for sure. Staff from the University of Oxford Archeology found this bone among a number of Roman items, including pottery and animal bones. So they think it has been curated by a Roman fossil fan. The items are found at 2 sites in the King's Hedges area of Cambridge, dating from the mid-2nd to the late 4th century CE. The Roman remains were preserved beneath existing car parks. What's going on in car parks? Lots of cool things, apparently. And garages close to Aragon Close and Sackville Close. The remains discovered consist of ditches and pits, a potential structure, and several Roman burials. However, this plesiosaur bone was remarkable. Andrew Grief, senior project manager at Oxford Archaeology, said, quote, as archaeologists, we are often asked by members of the public if we found any dinosaur bones, and on this occasion, we actually found one. This bone was worn in places, suggesting that it had been handled often in the past. We've got enough evidence to show the Romans found these things, but you can only imagine what they thought they had. The items from this dig will eventually be given to Cambridge's County Council once they have been cleaned and recorded. Collecting is absolutely an ancient habit. Definitely. The question is, what, as they rightly say, what did this Roman collector think they had on their hands? Because presumably they wouldn't have known what a plesiosaur was. And one wonders, if they've only got that one vertebrae, what do you think of the rest? Interesting, right? And we have another person to be adding to our League of Extraordinary Child Archaeologists. What did we think of a name for them? Kids That Dig, which sounds creepy, actually. Maybe not that. We've got an 8-year-old boy who has found a remarkable discovery in Germany. This is a rare Roman coin from the time of the Emperor Marcus Aurelius. This boy named Bjorn found the coin while playing in a sandbox at an after-school club. It was then identified as a denarius. It is more than 1,800 years old. Probably they did think they had a dragon. I wonder if they did think they had a dragon spine in their hand. I wonder. The find was made in 2022, but it was only announced last week, with details being released at a press conference. The coin dating to the time of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire from CE 161 to CE 180. This area of Germany, though, in which it was found was not part of the empire, so the find is unusual. They're not even sure how it made its way to Bremen. It's not clear where the sand in the sandbox originated from, but the coin could have ended up in the sand during mining. We do know that Roman coins did spread beyond the borders of the empire as a result of trade or loot, and it might even have reached Bremen as part of a souvenir. We are told this is a very special find. There have been only 2 comparable finds dating to the period in the Roman Empire in the city of Bremen. One discovered in the 1930s, and the other in the second half of the century. The boy said he's happy the coin is going to be displayed at the Bremen State Museum for Art and Cultural History, the Folk Museum. He said the coin's going to the museum, it can stay there and I can look at it any time and others can too. That is a lovely little boy who realises that part of heritage is making sure that it's visible to as many people as possible, so as many people as possible can learn from it. Window bars from a Roman public bath have been uncovered in Spain. Archaeologists working at the site of an ancient bath complex in Spain have found a set of crisscrossing iron bars they think went over a window in a changing room. We've talked about the site at Merida because its other finds have come up. It's in the southwestern part of the country. This is the site of a colony that was called Augusta Emerita, and many parts of that colony are still standing. They've got an amphitheatre, a water supply system, and also a bridge over the river. The Roman ruins have been listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1993. In recent months, archaeologists working on behalf of the consortium of the monumental city of Merida have been exploring a Roman public bath complex close to the amphitheatre. They announced the discovery of the baths earlier this summer after 6 months of excavation, and then they have these practically intact window bars. The archaeologists found a similar set of iron bars in the early 1960s in the kitchen of a large residence near the amphitheatre. Elsewhere in Europe, archaeologists have been making other Roman era discoveries this summer. So we talked about an ancient Roman bath complex while they were building a new fountain, and lots of other finds that have been found all over the place. So at this site in Merida, restorers and conservationists are cleaning and preparing these newly unearthed iron bars so that they can be displayed publicly. And looking ahead, the researchers plan to continue their work in Merida as, quote, there is still a lot of archaeological heritage underground in the ancient city just waiting to be unveiled, as the consortium writes on Facebook. The boy who found the coin is certainly more grown up than certain institutions. I would agree. On the plesiosaur vertebra, Miss Dr. Cat has added, it's worth remembering that wildlife in Europe looked a bit different to Romans, and a lot of the larger beasts we have lost would still have been present, so bears and boars. They would have known about giraffes and elephants, and one vertebra might have been difficult to imagine, something they hadn't seen before, so maybe they thought it came from a giraffe or something like that. Perhaps. Thank you, dear. We have got a new find throwing light on the life of enslaved people in ancient Pompeii. Archaeologists have found a small bedroom in a Roman villa near Pompeii, almost certainly used by slaves. This room was found in the Civitia Juliana Villa, which is some 600 meters north of the walls of Pompeii, which was wiped out by a volcanic eruption, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. And they found 2 beds, only one of which had a mattress. There are 2 small cabinets and a series of urns and ceramic containers in which the remains of 2 mice and a rat were found. So we are told, quote, these details once again underline the conditions of precarity and poor hygiene in which the lower echelons of society lived during that time. When filled with plaster, this void reveals the original shape and contours of the long-gone material, including the outline of a crumpled blanket left on the bed netting. We're told it looks like a photograph. However, this is an image from almost 2,000 years ago. No traces are found of grates, locks, or chains to restrain the room's inhabitants. It seems that control was primarily exerted through the internal organisation of servitude rather than by physical barriers or restraints. These excavations were carried out in 1907 to 1908 and then again from 2017 when police realised the site was being plundered by illegal diggers. The site has seen a burst of recent archaeological activity, which we have talked about, aimed at halting years of decay and neglect. Quote, what we're learning about the material conditions and social organisation of that area opens up new horizons for historical and archaeological studies. So, I look forward to seeing what else we find out about this and indeed the other stuff that's going to keep coming out of Pompeii. I don't think we're done yet. I think there's going to be more to come. We have got Roman fragments offering a glimpse of Emperor Hadrian's daily events calendar. Some of the daily activities of the Roman Emperor Hadrian, who built monuments including the Pantheon during his more than 2-decade reign, have been revealed after the discovery of fragments of marble slabs in Ostia Antica, an archaeological park close to Rome that was once the city's harbour. The details were inscribed on Fasti Ostienses, a type of calendar chronicling events involving emperors and other officials in ancient Rome. They were drafted by the Pontifex Vulcani, the highest local religious authority. There are 2 newly recovered fragments, which experts say matches perfectly with another previously found at the site. The inscription talks about events including what happened on the 10th of January, where Hadrian received the title Pater Patriae, or Father of Country, and his wife Sabina that of Augusta. According to the inscription, Hadrian celebrated the occasion by offering a congia dedit, or a donation of money, to the people. On the 11th of April, there's references to Hadrian's trip to Africa. Then a subsequent trip to Athens, he consecrated a building in Rome, Consecraviet, that experts believe could be the Pantheon or the Temple of Venus and Roma. This is on his 11th anniversary as emperor. The director of the archaeological park said that the extraordinary discovery sheds more light on the activities of Hadrian, including the buildings he constructed in Rome, while also helping to better understand the story of ancient Ostia. Fragments of Fasti Ostienses were first discovered at the site in 1940 and 1941, and then again between 1969 and 72, including one that joins the recently rediscovered fragment. The combined slab chronicles the AD 126 to 128 period. Some of the calendar fragments, which range between 49 and 175, are on display at the Vatican Museum. Ostia Antica, which is less than 19 miles from Rome, lay in ruins until the 19th century. It contains a theatre, which hosts productions and concerts, the remains of Roman baths, schools, temples, and a synagogue. A lifeguard and a beachgoer discover 2nd century archaeological treasure at a central Italy beach. So this lifeguard was doing double duty in his role as apparently amateur archaeologist. He and a beachgoer came across 2nd century amphora during a leisurely walk. This is the beach in Latina, the capital of Italy's Lazio region, were perfect for a stroll. The day was hot, the low 80s, sea exceptionally clear. Incidentally, these are the same conditions that make finding an artifact from antiquity as easy as skipping stones. The flaneur was enjoying his walk along the shore of the Pontine beach when he spotted something not normally seen amongst the shells, umbrellas, and bits of driftwood. He saw a tall, thin jar known as an amphora. The man called the closest lifeguard, an unnamed 19-year-old stationed not far away. The lifeguard, with extreme caution, lifted the amphora out of the sand by its neck. He then called the Coast Guard, who sent Commander Samuel Sasso to retrieve the artifact. It is apparently perfectly preserved and is believed to have washed up onto shore overnight. The amphora will likely be housed in a museum in Latina, founded by Benito Mussolini in the 1930s after the draining of the Pontine marshes. So interesting. You never know what you're going to find just on a walk. There are reports that Israel may uproot an ancient Christian mosaic near Armageddon. Where it could go next is sparking outcry. This mosaic bears an early reference to Jesus as God, and it's at the centre of a controversy that has riled archaeologists. Should this centuries-old decorated floor be uprooted and loaned to a US museum that has been criticised in the past for its acquisition practices? The proposed loan is going to the Museum of the Bible in Washington. Now, you have all told me in various ways about the Museum of the Bible. I don't claim to be an expert, but I am concerned. Don't they own Hobby Lobby? Is this the same bunch that owns Hobby Lobby? But also, allegedly, they feel like they're sort of people that might sue. Allegedly, Christo-fascists? Is my noise that I make? Yes, they do own Hobby Lobby. Right. Yeah. Okay. So I have, okay. Right, cool. I was right to go, oh, I recognise that name. That's a problem. We are told this deepens the ties between Israel and evangelical Christians in the US, whom Israel has come to count on for political support, tourism dollars, and other benefits. This mosaic is believed to be from the world's earliest Christian prayer hole, located in a Roman-era village, northern Israel. It was discovered in 2005 during an excavation conducted as part of the planned expansion of an Israeli prison. So, I mean, it looks like it's in incredible condition, doesn't it? So, Kavern Concannon, who is a religion professor at the University of Southern California, said that the Museum of the Bible, I assume, acts as, quote, a right-wing Christian nationalist Bible machine with links to other institutions that promote white evangelical Christian nationalism, Christian Zionist forms. This is no bueno. My worry is this mosaic will lose its actual historical context and be given an ideological context that continues to help the museum tell its story. Matthew Adams said it's seriously premature to move the mosaic. Asked about criticism of the Washington Museum's practices, OhHaHa said that major museums and distinguished institutions committed to preserving history have had to grapple with cultural heritage issues, particularly in recent years. To be clear, the Museum of the Bible is proud to have proactively launched research and a thorough review of items in its collection. The museum has initiated returns where appropriate to countries of origin without obligation to do so, and encourages other institutions to do the same. The mosaic bears a Greek inscription, among them to God Jesus Christ. We are also told that since opening its doors in 2017, the Museum of the Bible has faced criticisms over its collecting practices and for promoting an evangelical Christian political agenda. In 2018, it had to repatriate an ancient Mesopotamian tablet looted from Iraq and admit that several of the Dead Sea Scroll fragments in its collection were modern forgeries. American authorities also seized thousands of clay tablets and other looted antiquities from the museum's founder, Hobby Lobby president, and evangelical Christian Steve Green, and returned them to Iraq. What's amazing to me is how rich these devoutly Christian people are, in a manner that, as a casual observer, appears dramatically, offensively unchrist-like. The odour of hypocrisy is rife. Yeah, this, I don't know how this gets stopped, because clearly money and political pressure talks on this one, doesn't it? It's gonna be a very sad loss, but if it goes that way, I feel like we may as well count it as loss, because from what I understand allegedly of this museum, the narrative they will and the shifting interpretation of provenance they're going to place on this, it's bad. I don't like it. It makes me angry. That is wild. What is about camels and the eyes of needles? Okay. They do a lot about, things being not scriptural. A lot of stuff being not scriptural. This is not scriptural. Archaeologists have discovered a Maya dish depicting a OhHaHa spirit. This is a protected spirit, and it's been found through excavations at Cansagabi, which is in the Mexican state of Campeche. This was deposited originally as a funerary offering. It depicts a protective spirit that were auxiliary supernatural entities of the Maya elite. Those who possess a OhHaHa are named in classical Maya inscriptions as Wahyao, meaning shaman, enchanter, nagual. The OhHaHa is rested in the heart during the day, but at night, when it's only slept, the soul can be projected at will into animals, comets, wind, lightning, and other supernatural phenomena. This is the most compelling proof linking the OhHaHa to personified illnesses can be found in El Ritual de los Bacabes, a Yucatec colonial manuscript originating from the late 18th century, potentially a reproduction of an earlier codex. This work contains 68 passages encompassing incantations, supplications, and medical formulas for remedying ailments. The maladies described within these texts adopt the likenesses of the creatures or human possessing their own consciousness, rendering them susceptible to directives from the healer. The healer endeavours to expel these ailments from the afflicted individual's body. The names assigned to these illnesses provide insight into the forms they are believed to assume, whether those of monkeys, deer, jaguars, birds, insects, or snakes. This dish depicts a sitting representation of a jaguar, a man dressed in the skin of a jaguar, surrounded by boxes that might represent turtle shells. It was found during the construction of Section 2 of the Mayan Train, where previous excavations in the 1990s uncovered the remains of 2 palace-type buildings within the archaeological zone. The whole thing with this prosperity gospel and all of that sort of stuff, it's like a pyramid scheme, right? It's very culty. It's very culty. They have found a new room. A secret room's been found in the 800-year-old Johnston Castle. This is in County Wexford. This room is thought to have been untouched for decades or longer. This is a Gothic revival castle outside Wexford town. It's been reopening to the public in stages. And this room was found when a carpenter was working on a window. It's now going to be assessed by the Irish Heritage Trust. The trust will examine how it can be used to benefit the castle in years to come. We're told it's an incredible discovery. Absolutely. It's highly unusual to find additional hidden treasures in heritage properties. And this is the second time this has happened at Johnston Castle, following our discovery of a secret room under the tower at the lake just last year. The room found under the tower is only accessible by boat. Quote, the trust mission is to care for properties and work towards making them fully sustainable. This is done through a number of different ways, such as working with visitors to our sites, philanthropy, and competitive grants. In the case of the windows here at Johnston Castle, the work are being completed with support of the Department of Heritage. Parts of the castle were first opened to the public in mid-2019. More followed during the last 2 years. There's been a €7.5 million makeover, which included the construction of a new visitor centre. This castle and estate had been in private hands for centuries. It was owned by a number of different aristocratic families before entering public ownership. The east wing, where renovation was completed last April, has a ballroom, oratory, billiard room, science laboratory across 3 floors. The manager of the castle, Brenda Comerford, said that the just discovered room was covered for a very long time. It is part of one of the towers, and I'm looking around it on initial inspection, we think it was likely a small turret bedroom. Quote, there's quite a tragic family history associated with Johnston Castle, so this room could have been sealed off due to a tragedy, which would have happened in times past. Who knows? We will need to investigate this further. I mean, I think probably for the research students, they would rather just get in the octagon, frankly, and have a ruck than probably don't go down the grant route, because it is hard work. The material culture of slavery has been uncovered on Sao Tome Island. This is the 16th century sugar plantation estate, and there has been found there material culture connected to enslavement. This is St. Thomas and Prince is the translation of this, and it was first settled by the Portuguese following the island's discovery by them in 1470. By the 1530s, the colony emerged as the largest producer of sugar globally. It relied on a labour force of enslaved Africans. It was the first tropical plantation economy based on sugar and slave labour. It acted as the blueprint for the plantations and plantation economies across the Americas. However, the economic success of Sao Tome was short-lived, as competition with Brazil, in combination with frequent insurrections by enslaved people, meant that the profits suffered and there were major losses by the early 17th century. Archaeologists from the University of Cologne and the Centre for African Studies at the University of Porto have been conducting a study on the largest sugar mill and estate from the 16th century. The sugar mill and estate house is located near the river Ribeiro Manuel Jorge, which flows easterly to the Gulf of Guinea. The magnitude of the structure mirrors the substantial enslaved workforce that laboured within the primary workspace. The surviving building is a 2-storey high with a rectangular plan, divided into 3 rooms. Ceramics, particularly sugar moulds, are found in large quantities across the site, in both the ground and embedded into the walls. X-ray fluorescence, a technique used to determine elemental composition of materials, allowed their origins to be determined. In this case, 3 sherds of moulds were analysed, and it was discovered they were made in the Aveiro Ovar region of Portugal, which was a major centre for ceramic production at the time. Researchers say, quote, importantly, these findings display how the plantation economic model later applied in the Americas originated, and the long distance connection required to facilitate its success. As such, this study could have dramatic implications for our understanding of colonial history. Next up, I'm going to show you a reconstruction of what they think Bonnie Prince Charlie may have looked like. Now, I'm just, it's a bit, it's haunting. For me, it's haunting. I don't like the look of him. He looks, they've made him look infectious, I feel. I don't want him to cough near me. It's what I think when I look on this face. The ringlets are gorgeous. There's a vibrancy and a bounce to those that is not matched in the hollows of the eyes. They are. He don't look well. He don't look well. So this is a team from the University of Dundee's Centre for Anatomy and Human Identification have used a death mask to recreate his looks. The prince died in 1788 and a cast was taken. This was then photographed and mapped and then they de-aged the prince. So this is not based solely on the death mask. This is him younger. Apparently he was renowned for his good looks and has now captivated a new generation of audiences through Outlander, which I have not seen, but I'm aware that there are some sexy tie. We have a prince with blonde ringlets in a white shirt with blotchy patches on his skin. This is supposed to be how he looked at the time of the Jacobite Rising, his unsuccessful attempt to restore his father to the British throne. Barbara Vesela, who's a master's student initiating the project, said, quote, I've looked at previous reconstructions of historical figures and was interested how these could be done differently. I wanted to create an image of what he would have looked like during the Jacobite Rising. There are death masks of Bonnie Prince Charlie that are accessible, while some are in private collections. We know he suffered a stroke before he died, so that made the process of age regression even more interesting to me. Copies of the masks were examined, and a composite was created over several months. Photographs were then taken from all around the masks. The researcher, she used software to make a 3D model. Quote, it's been a pleasure to work with these artifacts. The access I've been given has been incredible. There are moments when you're working with the mask that it suddenly strikes you this was once a living person. I mean, in this picture, he looks like he's barely living. Barely. We don't tend to think about the age of people when we study history, but Prince Charlie was just 24 years old when he landed in Scotland. And to try and visualise how young he was at a pivotal moment in history is fascinating. Hopefully, this recreation encourages people to think about him as a person instead of just a legend. The work will feature as part of the University of Dundee's annual Master Show, which opens to the public on Saturday. I couldn't find why the coloration. Why he looks so sickly. I don't know what the choice was there. But I find that for me, that image is frankly nightmare fuel. Maybe he's stressed. Maybe this is the coloring is being done because he's been through a period of stress and he's quite young. So there's like potentially adolescent acne plus sleep deprivation. I don't know what he died of. Well, he died of a stroke. This person died of a stroke. Quite some years after this age regression. So he's not nearly dead here. He just looks like he is. Yeah, it poor sod. He don't look well. The Metropolitan Museum of Art has acquired the first naturalistic portrait of a named black subject in the American antebellum South in its American Wing collection. This dates to around 1837, and we see here a 15-year-old whose name is Belisaire, who is painted with the children of the family that enslaved him. This work is attributed to the New Orleans-based artist Jacques Guillaume Lucien Armand, and we are told it represents an individualistic depiction of an enslaved person and the family of their enslaver that is considered to be extremely rare. The figure of Belisaire was painted over approximately 50 years later, but after a century, Belisaire and the Frey Children has been restored to its original composition, and it's going to go on view at the Met this fall. He was enslaved with his mother in 1828. It's thought that she worked as a household cook while he worked inside the family's home in New Orleans' French Quarter. The patriarch of the household, the enslaver, was a German-born merchant. His wife, Coralie, came from a long line of wealthy New Orleans. We see the three children sitting below Belisaire in this portrait, gazing towards the viewer while he is looking away, seemingly contemplative. We can see as well in the smaller image that you can see there's almost like a ghost-like image of him, but obviously it's been painted over. Katie Mawler-Shannon has uncovered the story of Belisaire and the phrase. She was hired by Jeremy K. Simeon, a Baton Rouge collector who had purchased the painting from a Virginia antiques dealer. Quote, we are told, Shannon told the New York Times, quote, no white person of any social standing in New Orleans at that time would have wanted a black person portrayed with their family on the wall. The portrait's painter was a white man. A few prominent freed black artists lived and worked in New Orleans in the decades leading up to the Civil War, and freed black people were sometimes able to achieve economic success in the city. A painter by the name of Julian Hudson was among them. He studied in France, and he rendered portraits of upper echelons of New Orleans society in the mid-1800s. In a statement shared with Hyperallergic, Sylvia Yunt, the Met's curator in charge of the American Wing, called the painting transformative for the department. She stated, quote, the work allows us to address many collection absences and asymmetries as the museum approaches American Art Department's centennial. So, very, very interesting. And it's a beautiful piece. Fascinating. And now, without further ado, let's talk about this nonsense. So, news broke a few days ago, week ago or so, of a British museum worker being sacked over missing treasures. At first, this is the first sort of articles we're seeing, that police are investigating. A member of staff has been fired after treasures were reported missing, stolen, or damaged. These are gold, jewellery, gems of semi-precious stones, among those missing from the museum. These items, we're told, were kept in a storeroom. The museum director said the museum would, quote, throw the efforts into the recovery of the objects. We're told it's a highly unusual incident. I know I speak for colleagues when I say that we take the safeguarding of all of our items in our care extremely seriously. We are told they tightened the security arrangements, working alongside outside experts to complete a definitive account of what is missing, damaged, or stolen. Legal action would be taken against a staff member who was fired, the museum added. The Economic Crime Command of the Met Police was investigating, but no arrests have been made. We are told that the museum has started an independent review of security. We have the following quote. Quote, the trustees, George Osborne informs us, the trustees of the British Museum were extremely concerned when we learned earlier this year that items from the collection had been stolen. They called the police, imposed emergency measures, etc. We are told the priority is now threefold: to recover the stolen items, find out what, if anything, could have been done to stop this, and to do whatever it takes with investment in security and collection records to make sure this doesn't happen again. So that is what's happening. That is the first bit of news. The incident is going to be led by Lucy Dorsey, Chief Constable of British Transport Police, and former British Museum trustee Nigel Boardman. They will also kickstart and support a vigorous programme to recover the missing items. So that was where we were. And as time has gone on, more has trickled out. So we've learned that jewellery worth apparently up to $63,000 was stolen from the World's Museum and then sold on eBay, apparently, for as little as $50. Some of these items were worth up to £50,000, and they were listed on eBay for as little as 40 or 50, according to the Telegraph. What is going on? The antiquities expert who had spotted this reported that a staff member was stealing from the secure vaults in 2013, and the missing items then began turning up on eBay 3 years later. The accused person, this is all alleged, let's be clear, Peter Higgs, 56, who held the position of curator of Mediterranean cultures at the museum for over 3 decades, was fired after an internal investigation. His son, Greg, has maintained that his father is innocent, saying he's not done anything. He's not happy about it at all. He's lost his job and his reputation. I don't think it was fair. He's devastated about it because it's his life work, basically. I've never known somebody who's so passionate about what he did. It gets weirder. It just gets weirder and weirder. The museum said on Wednesday that several items of jewellery made of gold, semi-precious stones and glass, dating from between 1500 BCE and the 19th century, were among those that were missing. Others were damaged. One piece of Roman jewellery made from onyx, the dealer said, was valued between £25,000 and £50,000. It was listed on eBay with a minimum price of £40 or $50 back in 2016. Nobody bid on the treasure. The police are now investigating the thefts. The museum had not properly catalogued all 8 million items in its collection, which makes it easier for thefts to go undetected, the Telegraph was told. Professor Martin Heinig, who's a Roman art expert, said major things do get catalogued. There are a lot of minor things which are not, or which are all lumped together. There is now an independent review underway to find out what's missing. A spokesman for the British Museum said, "We have conducted a thorough investigation, identified the person we believe to be responsible. That person has been dismissed. We're also taking further robust action to ensure this can never happen again." The whole question of the theft at the museum is now the subject of criminal investigation, so we cannot comment further. What is eBay? Okay, so then we find out an art dealer alerted the British Museum to alleged stolen items from the institution in 2021, but was told that, quote, all objects were accounted for. Itai Gradel alleged in February 21 he had seen items online belonging to the museum. Deputy Director Jonathan Williams responded in July 2021, saying that there was no suggestion of any wrongdoing. The museum has apparently been contacted for comment. That there had been, he was told there was a thorough investigation and the collection was protected. The London institution, however, announced last week that this was not obviously the case. And thank you, darling. Morty, love you. BBC understands that while there are unanswered questions for the museum due to police involvement, they can't comment further at the present. The museum has launched its own investigation of the theft. Dr. Graydale's email to Jessie became suspicious when he stumbled upon a photo of a Roman cameo fragment that had been up for sale and had been listed on the British Museum website, but had since been removed. He alleges that in one of his emails, a third-party seller returned a gem to the museum as soon as Graydale told him of his suspicions, but then claims the museum didn't follow this up sufficiently. He sent several emails to follow up any progress, this time to a board trustee. Dr. Graydale calls accused the director, Hartwig Fisher, and Mr. Williams of, quote, sweeping it all under the carpet. In one response emailed in October 2022, a trustee who was following up on Dr. Graydale's concerns said that there was no evidence that the three items he'd mentioned were in the collection. George Osborne told Dr. Graydale in January that I have taken your comments very seriously. It's now believed that 1,500 objects were stolen, damaged, or destroyed. Labour MP Ben Bradshaw, who is a former culture secretary, said that these allegations were extremely serious. That is an understatement. These are priceless objects that belong to the nation. They should be safe. And also, as this is a publicly funded institution, we should have full transparency at the earliest possible moment as to how this happened, why, and what's going to go on to make sure it doesn't happen ever again. This has potential reputational damage for Britain because this is already being reported across the globe. Yes, the British Museum is probably the world's most famous museum. The Culture Department will be wanting to assure itself from the Board of Trustees and George Osborne that it has the governance in place to protect these items now and in the future to prevent anything like this ever happening again. We were told that Fisher's going to step down from his role as director in 2024. Osborne told the BBC that Hartwig has been a much respected director. I have been very clear, as has Hartwig, that his decision was not connected to our announcement last week. And then, ding-a-ling-a-ling, we have got this news. British Museum director Hartwig Fisher has quit early. His statement: over the last few days, I have been reviewing in detail the events around the theft from the British Museum and the investigation into them. It is evident that the British Museum did not respond as comprehensively as it should have in response to these warnings in 2021. This is the weird thing. Why are we talking about 2021 when there's talk about stuff happening in 2013? How long has this been going on for? How long has this been going on for? And it's a problem that is now fully emerged. The responsibility for that failure must ultimately rest with the director. I also misjudged the remarks I made earlier this week about Dr. Graydale. I wish to express my sincere regret and withdraw those remarks. I've offered my resignation to the chairman of the trustees and will step down as soon as the board have established an interim leadership arrangement. This will remain in place until a new director is chosen. The situation facing the museum is of the utmost seriousness. I sincerely believe it will come through this moment and emerge stronger. Okay, but sadly, I have come to the conclusion that my presence is proving a distraction. That is the last thing I would want. Over the last 7 years, I have been privileged to work with some of the most talented and dedicated public servants. The British Museum is an amazing institution, and it's been the honour of my life to lead it. I have absolutely no doubt that the staff at the British Museum are incredibly dedicated. The curatorial team, apart from the ones that are allegedly stealing, love their job, and they almost certainly work for far below what they should be paid for the level of expertise and the hours that they work, without a shadow of a doubt. The management, and as with all of our public institutions currently, the nosy investigations and input and control freakery of the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, whatever it's called currently, is problematic. But wait, there's more. We are told that the artifacts from the British Museum, some of them may be untraceable due to poor records. Let's not solely blame curators or anything. The British Museum has been going for a very long time. The cataloguing of things, it's been stealing things for a very long time. It's been a warehousing, allegedly stolen goods for a very long time, and cataloguing things has been slapdash. The people who are now in charge or who are now working there have inherited decades, over a century of poor practice that they now have to try and fix, while at the same time doing their own stuff, whilst being underfunded as a public institution. Let's be clear. So let's not blame them. Let's point to decades of mismanagement and underfunding. And this is a public institution, so let's lay it at the door where it belongs to be, the government. The same people who are also standing in the way because of their refusal to engage in legal redress to potentially have things returned to where they belong. Just putting it out there. So hundreds of these objects have never been catalogued by the museum, which makes it incredibly difficult, understandably, to prove that they were ever there. We've now got 2,000 stolen items. It was 1,500 before, now it's 2,000. Good. Love to see that that clarity. It's wonderful. It's the museum is being called on to immediately publish a list of what's missing in order to help experts assist with the search. Quote, I don't have any evidence to start checking. By not publishing a list of what's missing, they are trying the hands of experts who should be helping. I would love to help, but I can't. Mr. Osborne told the BBC the museum is working very closely with the police, who were the only people who could put a list of stolen items on Interpol. Is Interpol the only way to trace stolen goods? Don't think so. Okay. Considering the eBay stuff, that wasn't Interpol, was it? Anyway, Mr. Osborne admitted that not all objects in the British Museum's possession had been formally recorded. Let's remember, George Osborne is a politician. He's a politician. So he's a political placement to oversee what's going on at the British Museum. He insisted it was not unique for a large museum to not fully catalogue its whole collection. He's absolutely not wrong there. And that it was ahead of many of the big museums in doing this work. Okay. Dr. Tsirizagalis said that recording objects was, quote, the primary responsibility of a museum. It's one of the primary responsibilities. Cataloguing objects is undeniably one of the primary responsibilities of the museum. However, let's be very clear. Curating and also maintaining the objects is, in fact, the principal concern. Making sure things stay in as good a state as possible is the principal concern. So, Deputy Director Jonathan Williams, who was involved with the 2021 investigation, will step back from his normal duties until an independent review launched by the museum concludes. This scandal, we are told, has prompted questions about the British Museum's wider role as an institution housing objects from around the world. What is going on? It's the weirdly, and maybe I'm focusing on the wrong thing here. It's the eBay of it all that makes me go, I'm sorry, what? eBay? Fully baffled. An audit of the British Museum, I genuinely don't know how many auditors you would need to make that less than a decade of work, working 365, possibly day and night shifts. The scale of their collection and holdings is unfathomable. So yeah, an audit would be great, but an audit would take a decade at minimum, I think, minimum. And also, you need records to do an audit. And as we're finding out here, these records, they be patchy. Gar Jim lad, pyretically patchy, apparently. On the eBay thing, maybe he thought things at a certain price would be tagged. Yeah. But the person who's been accused of this, the alleged culprit, if you're going to blow up your reputation and your pension and your world and whatever, why would you take something that's worth £50,000 and try and sell it for 40 quid? Considering as well, we know that for decades, these dubious art collectors have infiltrated world museums. If he really wanted to, he could contact them and find a buyer. Right? I see no ships. It's hubris. Yep, could be hubris, could be that. My husband said, never underestimate the potential of a small group of highly motivated individuals, which is from the foundation of the SAS. That and he is saying that in relation to auditors. My husband was an auditor, so he's. I don't know if he's. Is that mean he's volunteering as tribute to go and audit the British Museum? Perhaps. What if he's a patsy? I don't know. He seems like a guy who knows a guy. My thoughts exactly. Scapegoat, right? Don't know. Don't know. Don't know. My fully I was talking about this with my husband last night, and I said I had this theory, and he basically said, "Don't say it," but I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. He's volunteering as tribute as well to go and audit the British Museum. Look, the person who is allegedly responsible for this, the accused, what if he is responsible and he did this wanting to be caught? What if this is about what if the purpose of it is to, he's saying no, was to he's shouting, what if the purpose was him or his was ideological? It's just so there's just so much hubris. What if he wanted to make the museum look bad because he didn't like how things were being handled? What if he's the equivalent of a white hat hacker from within who is pointing out, maybe he knows where everything is as well. Maybe he can reclaim it. Maybe it's all of that. Maybe he wants to point out that the failure to fund cataloguing has left a vulnerability. But that could be, it's 10:30 at night and I need a nap thinking. He's not going to get on this chat because he's cooking my dinner currently. But he and I do have plans to film a video together talking about ChatGPT because he is currently dealing with the fallout of that stuff coming into business. So I want to have a chat with him about that. What if he wanted the museum to be investigated? Sounds like 5D chess. Look, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. That it does sound like that. It does sound fully like tinfoil hat. I've got a board. I've got a board of crazy theories. I get it. I do get it. But I don't know. I mean, that sounds ludicrous. When you put it like that, Jessie, that sounds ludicrous. However, I have just made a video. So Friday's video is going to be on somebody who was absolutely prepared to go to prison for their beliefs. She was a suffragette. If you work somewhere for 3 decades, these are dedicated people who love what they do. And if you're blowing all of the whistles and nothing's happening, how far would you go? How far would you go? I don't. It's the eBay of it all. It's just so ludicrous to me. It's so foolish and cheap and just nonsense. I mean, I know they don't earn much, but still, if you're going to do that, I don't know. Right, so there will be updates on this. I can almost guarantee it. And my husband has pointed out that no one really wants to go to prison. He said it in different words. This is for me, Steve. This is for me the thing. You've got a £50,000 object, and you're selling it for 40 quid on eBay, and it's someone that's not even selling. It's not even selling. You're not relisting it, unless I mean, unless eBay is a front and that's a way of telling the undercover dealers what you got to do, what's the motivation? It's scheming schemes. It's scheming schemes. So we're going to leave that alone for now, but trust and believe stuff is coming. I'm sure there's no way this is going to go away. So I'll see you in a fortnight with more, no doubt, nonsense. We are told that an auctioneer who helped produce fake Basquiats has avoided jail and is instead receiving probation. This is an auctioneer who pled guilty to helping a group who produced a fake Jean-Michel Basquiat paintings. He's received a sentence of probation and community service in LA. There was a saga surrounding a 2022 exhibition that was held at the Orlando Museum of Art in Florida. That show led to an FBI raid, the firing of the museum's director, and legal action that's still ongoing. That is quite the pile of manure. Including the show were a group of works that the museum's director at the time claimed had been produced in 1982 while this artist lived in Los Angeles. He said that they were then left in a storage unit and forgotten. It was claimed they were major discoveries, but then there was doubt that emerged when a New York Times ran an investigation that questioned the authenticity of these things. Then the FBI investigated 25 paintings, seized them in a dramatic raid that made headlines around the world. And the Michael Barsman, the auctioneer who was sentenced to probation, was interviewed by federal agents. Speaking in 2022, he claimed he had no role in the production of the works. Then in 2023, he pled guilty to lying to the FBI and that he had built a false provenance for the paintings. This provenance was intended to act as documentation for the storage unit narrative. LA prosecutors had been seeking the sentence that Barsman ultimately received. His sentence involves 3 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and a fine of $500. And the lawyer responsible for him has said that he is never going to reoffend. Well, I don't think he'd be believed now. He's like, I found some statues in a lockup. Look at me. I was doing storage wars and I found these wonderful things. Everyone's going to be like, no. No, you've cried wolf, sir. You've cried Basquiat, and now we doubt everything you say. The investigation into the Basquiats continues, as does the intrigue. The Orlando Museum of Art sued de Groft, whom it fired not long after the FBI raid in 2022. The museum alleges that de Groft had made efforts to profit from putting the Basquiats in the exhibition, and they was attempting to do something similar with the paintings by Titian and Jackson Pollock that were not in the show. He has denied wrongdoing. So, what? We're moving away from forgeries and general crimins. Yeah, art crimins. We're going to have to do it. There may well be, but then you see, there's actually a lot of crime. There's a lot of crime. I mean, frankly, anything in the repatriation, decolonization section relates to a crime. And then we've got crimes, new crimes, the new crimes and the old. That is happening. That's a thing. You wanting an exhibition on forgeries, that's a thing that's happened. Bum bum. I don't want to get copyrighted. Don't want to get copyrighted. That's it. I'm not going to say it out loud, but that's the one. In the criminal justice. No, I'm just this is hormonal. Once a month, all of my sinuses block up. It's the fun of being a lady for me. That's how I usually get a sore throat. That's stopped for a while, but yeah, I just all of my sinuses block. It's lovely. It's delightful. I love being a woman. We have, this is cool. I thought? They are building an Iron Age village by hand. Isn't that cool? This is Nellie Wilson. She's working on a new Scottish crannog centre. And they are weaving together hazel branches to build the walls and roof of a replica Iron Age roundhouse. There was a fire that destroyed the popular attraction on the back of Loch Tay 2 years ago. There was a late night blaze that took 6 minutes to rip through the centre's best known feature, which was this Iron Age roundhouse. It had been there for 25 years before the fire. Historically, we're told crannogs were widespread in Ireland and Scotland, the first ones being built 2,500 years ago. The centre's museum displays objects found in excavations, including a butter dish and a part of a stringed musical instrument. The Nellie says, quote, "I've never worked on something like that before. It made me value and understand what we're doing on a different level and appreciate that if things had to be done slower or in a different way, there was a reason for it. And you can imagine a bit what it would have been like." Experimental archaeology, I genuinely believe, is a vital practice for historians, heritage workers, archaeologists. It can't tell you everything, but it really framed your thinking in really useful ways, I think. She goes on, "It's amazing that they would have built something similar to this with half of the modern day tools that we've been given." Jim Doherty is a dry stone waller from Cumbria, and he is part of the build team at the Crannog Centre, responsible for the stone construction. He says, "It's something I've never done before, but I don't think many people have built a reconstruction of an Iron Age village. I've always had an interest in history and archaeology, and then I came to learn more about the Crannog, the things they do, the outreach they have. It was exactly the kind of museum that I would love to go to." The director of the Crannog Centre said, "We are showcasing all the different skills and materials that the Crannog people would have used. When you look at what was achieved 2,500 years ago, it's a brilliant story." So this is being funded by the Scottish government, and one of the apprentices who's working at the centre says that it also is helping traditional skills to be kept alive. We are told the Crannog itself is going to be built over the winter, and a new centre is expected to open in the spring. So when that happens, I will, of course, update you in an events and exhibitions segment. We have got news of an auction. Leonardo da Vinci's treatise on painting, along with other ultra-rare Renaissance books, are being auctioned. They are expected to fetch $25 million at auction. This is a trove of 16th century books in their original binding, and it's going on the block at Sotheby's in October, with prices for each item ranging between $200,000 to $600,000. They are from the collection of T. Kimball Brooker, who is a bibliophile and scholar who has amassed more than 1,300 titles over 6 decades. It's got this is one of the most important rare book libraries ever to reach auction. The Leonardo da Vinci treatise on painting it's got all of its original 375 chapters and 56 illustrations. Following his death in 1519, his manuscripts were gathered by his lifelong companion Francesco Melzi, who marked the passages related to painting and dutifully copied them with their corresponding drawings in a codex that's now owned by the Vatican Library. The abridged version up for sale, which was made between 1638 and 41, was stripped of potentially heretical passages, according to Sotheby's. It is expected to fetch between £120,000 to £180,000. Also up for auction at this time, there are approximately 1,000 editions from pioneering Venetian publisher Aldine Press, which was printed between 1494 and the 1590s. These are works in Greek and Latin, works of history, philosophy, and science. Quote, this constitutes the largest collection of Aldines to grace the market in the modern era. The volumes are not merely of historical curiosity, they have left a lasting impact on the world of publishing and the appearance of the modern book. The printed device of the dolphin and anchor remains an enduring symbol of quality, still acknowledged by publishers and bibliophiles today. Beyond the Ordine collection, there are some 450 other books of remarkable provenance. So do check it out. The Brooker auction will span 8 sales, beginning with a live evening sale on October the 11th in New York, the first Aldine sale on October the 12th. Additional sales will take place in New York and London through 2025. I hope whoever they go to can take care of them and deal with the particular problems that maintaining rare books and manuscripts entails. These need to be climate controlled, fireproof, limited access to bugs and oxygen and all the rest of it. So there are very few places and people who have the capacity to look after this stuff properly. Last but by no means least, a slice of Queen Victoria's wedding cake sold at auction for £700. This cake is 182 years old, and it was sold by an auction house in Devon. The cake was in its original wrapping and in a small presentation box, which bore the words, "The Queen's Bridal Cake, Buckingham Palace, February the 10th, 1840. It was a 3-tiered wedding cake originally, which weighed 300 pounds and was 10 feet wide. The auction house has strongly advised the buyer not to eat the cake. I could not agree more. I would certainly not recommend eating 182-year-old cake. But, you know, what a thing. If you're a collector, I suppose, what a thing to collect. I can't imagine doing it myself. I wouldn't know. Do you keep it in the freezer? What do you do with this? But, you know, and that, friends, is the new news. We have one ding dong to look at. Where's my ding dong? Here's my ding dong. Ding dong. Let's. Shannon, have you met people? Of course they had to give a warning. Of course they did. Ding dong is coming. One thing, how is it not dust? Probably because it's, I would imagine, rock solid. I'm guessing that has what you've got there is a wedge of marzipan and a brick. It has ossified. So, ding dong. This absolute, nope, can't swear. Don't. 2 German tourists have been arrested for defacing the Vasari corridor in Florence. They spray painted the characters DKS 1860, which apparently refers to the football team 1860 Munich. This was spray painted on 7 outdoor columns under this famous Italian landmark. That happened on a Tuesday night. They sprayed a series of characters on 7 outdoor columns lining a portico under the corridor. The Carabinieri, the Italian police force, analysed CCTV footage the following morning and showed 3 figures approaching the corridor. 2 of the guests, aged 20 to 21, were identified as the vandals. They were then taken to police headquarters. Their fingerprints were taken, and that will be then compared on 2 black spray paint cans that have been confiscated from the apartment they were staying in. The director of the Uffizi said, quote, "Enough with token punishment and fanciful extenuating circumstances. We need the hard fist of the law." Dirty. In a further statement, the director of the Uffizi said that the museum will demand the alleged vandals reimburse the museum for the cleanup operation, which is going to last a few days and will cost around £10,000. The museum will also press charges against them under the Urban Code for damaging a trademark that has an estimated market value. Trademark, the landmark that has an estimated market value of €100,000. This portico that runs under the gallery is going to be surveilled by armed security services for 24 hours a day since September. So I'm looking out the door because my husband's just come up clinging to our baby monitor, which probably means that the son is waking. The culture minister thanked the Cabineri and said that acts like this must not go unpunished. Now let justice take its course. Last month, Italy's Senate approved a draft law that will introduce fines of between €10,000 to €60,000 for those who damage cultural heritage. Fair enough. The Vasari corridor housed the museum's collection of self-portraits from 1973 to 2016, when the passageway was closed for security reasons. It is expected to be reopened as part of the museum by the end of the year. And now, last but by no means least, we're hopping into a list of events and exhibitions. We have Many Wests, Artist, Shape, and American Idea. This is going on tour. It's starting off at the Smithsonian American Art Museum, and it will be there until January 14th, 2024. It has been on tour. It's been at the Boise Art Museum. It's been at the Whatcom Museum. It's been at the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art, and it's been at the Utah Museum of Art, and now it's staying at the Smithsonian Art Museum, and I think that's where it's ending this. This exhibition, we are told, presents an opportunity to examine previous misconception, question racist cliches, and highlight the multiple communities and histories that continue to form this iconic region of the United States. Working in various media, from painting and sculpture to photography and mixed media, the artists featured bring a nuanced and multifaceted history to light. Many Wests highlights the many voices, including artists who identify as Black, Indigenous, Asian American, Latinx, and LGBTQ+, who stake a claim in the American West. So if you get a chance to go to that, it looks fabulous. And I've seen some other pieces in the various articles I've looked at, and they look incredible. So do let me know what you think if you get a chance to go. As per usual, with this one I have, when I find the accessibility or access information, that is linked both in the opera pinboard next to this news item, but also it's linked as a sort of part of the numbered thing. So will be number 37, and then you will see A beneath it. That is the accessibility. So that is there. Do check that out. This one, no accessibility involved in this, because this is a digital exhibition that is being hosted by the State Library of Victoria of Melbourne. Do check this out. It's a digital journey through the treasures of the Emerson collection. It is fabulous. What I saw of it, I had a little look through. I will be going back for a more intense and in-depth glance. Beautiful, very, very beautiful. This is in Washington, D.C., the Museum of Failure. I thought this was really interesting. It's much more, many of these things seem to be much more recent history, but it's a unique exhibition where epic fails are celebrated. I'm not sure if or when this is closing. Tickets are now on sale, so I'm assuming it's now currently open. I think it looks really fascinating, and if this is the sort of thing that you're into, check it out. Tell me what you think. At the Met, we have Women Dressing Women. The Costume Institute's Fall 2023 exhibition will explore the creativity and artistic legacy of women fashion designers from the Met's permanent collection, tracing a lineage from the makers of the turn of the 20th century through to the present day, highlighting celebrated designers, new voices, and forgotten histories alike. So this is opening December 7th, 2023, and will be running until March the 3rd, 2024. Also at the Met, we have the Harlem Renaissance and Transatlantic Modernism. This opens February 25th, 2024, and is running until July 28th, 2024. It has been referred to as a groundbreaking exhibition. Through some 160 works of painting, sculpture, photography, film, and ephemera, it will explore the comprehensive and far-reaching ways in which Black artists portrayed everyday modern life in the new Black cities that took shape in the 1920s and 40s, in New York's Harlem, and nationwide in the early decades of the Great Migration, when millions of African Americans began to move away from the segregated rural South. The first art museum survey of the subject in New York City since 1987, the exhibition will establish the Harlem Renaissance and its radically new development of the modern Black subject as central to the development of the international modern art. This is kind of an update because I've been watching this, and thank you for sending it to me. We have a potential update on the Grand Egyptian Museum. We now have an opening announcement. This wasn't there before. This is a new page on the website. We've been told to check back periodically. The anticipated full opening late 2023, and you can sign up to be notified. So we haven't got a date, but this page didn't exist a few months ago. So there is movement in perhaps the right direction. And the final page I want to show you, this is going to be a shameless plug and self-promotion. My lovely friend Philippa, for those of you who watch History After Dark, Philippa is the voice of reason in our triumvirate of chaos. And she is also the owner-operator of a very successful company that does very successfully wonderful and luxury history tours, British history tours. And she has approached me to come along and be part of one of her tours. She usually does tours over a longer period. This is her first history weekend. It is running from the 28th of June to the 30th of June 2024. And as you can see, it is the Shakespeare in Stratford tour. The Shakespeare in Stratford tour, we are going to go to a relevant sites for Shakespeare's life. We're going to see a play at the RSC, and there will be 3 lectures from me. And included in it as well is luxury stay in a beautiful hotel with just it's going to be very excellent. As you can see, the priority booking has already opened on the 21st of August, but booking is open to all from Tuesday. So in 2 days' time, if you want to look at the itinerary, the prices, also the rest of Philippa's website, it is of course linked. So please do go and check that out. Now then, a few things I would like to also do as we start wrapping up. So I'm going to go back to just my face. Just my face. So as you can see here, scroll on the bottom is the link to my new website, the address for my new website. Please do have a look at that. www.katrinamarchant.com. I know that some of you have already been on and you have signed up to the mailing list. If you would like to be kept updated of what I'm doing, then please do that as well. I will be putting out mail shots for video uploads and also for live streams. I'm not going to spam you loads, but I am going to basically do what I hope YouTube would do for my content, but apparently it isn't doing quite as much as it should. However, if you want to take the belt and braces approach, please do make sure that you have liked this video. Thank you for chatting in the live stream. Please do comment on it afterwards. Please share the video. Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel, hit the bell icon, and also then when you hit the bell icon, select all in the drop down, and then allegedly YouTube should tell you when I'm next going live, when I've next uploaded. I do post things on my community tab as well. I think what I'm going to do is things that go on the community tab will also potentially be going into the next email shot, so there's extra content in there as well in case people are missing this stuff on the community tab. So that's what's going to be in the emails. If you would like to sign up, I would much appreciate it. Of course, on the website I also have merch. At some point, I'm also going to be booking myself in to have some professional photographs taken. So you'll see more of my face as well, and various things that I'm up to, etc., etc. That is what I have for you. I How is my little boy, Justine? He is good. Is he? My husband's laughing. He's been difficult of late. He's 2 and he wants the world to know it. Current phrases are don't, whatever you're going to say, don't. Oh yeah, the current phrases include "Mummy, call a doctor," "Daddy's a mess," "You're not the boss of me," "What's wrong with you?" What's the other one? Oh, he likes to shout "chicken with the face of a monkey" as well. He'll be 3 next month, and it's he's wonderful, but he doesn't let you get away with anything. He is very challenging. He's currently sleeping upside down in bed, so good. It's good times. It's good times. And he also, his feet smell. His feet smell a lot. All of him smells. What am I talking about? What am I talking about? He's a stinky little boy. A stinky little boy. But also, what the problem is that he's really cute, so he gets away with his nonsense a lot. Oh yeah, the other day he threw a sickie at daycare. That's the other fun thing. I'm going to end shortly, but he did throw a sickie at daycare. He basically there was a bout of hand, foot, and mouth going round, and he had some blisters on his feet. Nowhere else. I don't think he had hand, foot, and mouth. He had no fever, nothing else. But he, knowing this was going around, I think he started saying that he couldn't possibly put his shoes on because he was in agony, like weeping in agony. So my husband goes up to the daycare, collects him. We bring him home. We let him watch Frozen on the TV because he's poorly, isn't he? He's poorly. So we've got to make sure he has a nice time. Anyway, next day, about the same time, get a phone call. Suddenly he can't put his shoes on. He could put them on in the morning. That was fine. But all of a sudden he cannot, his feet are burning. They're on fire. He can't put his shoes on. So go back up the daycare. I say, when you get up there, tell him that if he's that sick, he needs to rest. So he can't have his tablet and he can't watch Frozen. All of a sudden, he can put his shoes on, wouldn't you know? All of a sudden, he's well enough to stay with his friends for story time. And that boy is I'm gonna need to be 5 steps ahead because that kid is too smart for his own good. And he gets away with a lot because I'm biased, but he is objectively cute as well. So wish me luck taking it on holiday. Gonna take him out of his usual environment. We're gonna be seeing family, so he's gonna be rammed full of sugar, spoiled, and he's gonna get an audience as well, which will go one of 2 ways. Because in front of an audience, he is the child that's like, "Please, may I play with that thing? Is it okay if I come in? Should I take off my shoes?" You know, super polite. And then with us, he's like, "You're not the boss of me." Throwing things. He's got an arm. That kid's got an arm on him. He will ding you right in the forehead. I mean, look, yes, I fully recognize that there are conditions that do make it feel like your feet are burning. But if you say that you can't possibly put your sandals on because your feet are burning so badly, and not 15 minutes later, when your father walks through the door, you hand him your shoes and say, "Put my shoes on so we can go home," I don't think your feet were burning. I think you were fibbing, telling a fib. And so now we've had to have the conversation of the difference between pretending and fibbing. No fibbing. We have to do the difference between fibbing and joking, because that's yeah. We try and say it's nap time when he misbehaves. He loves that. He makes a little blanket fort. He's got a floor bed, so he sits there and talks. He has a little tea party with all of his toys. He's got a morph. He's got an Eeyore. He's got all of them. Is Elsa comes out? They're all out having a little tea party. It's great times. So we're not at 3 hours. We're nearly there. We're not. I'm going to stop now before we get to 3 hours. Friends, thank you all so much for joining this live. If you are watching on the playback, apologies for that diversion into my parenting woes. We'll get there eventually. Thank you for staying. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for subscribing. And I will see you all in the live chat for the video on Friday. I'm also, if you are on the email mailing list, I will be emailing you about what's going on with that as well. So do keep your eyes peeled for all of that information when it comes into your inbox. I hope that you have a wonderful week. If you're in Monday already, have a lovely Monday. If it's still Sunday for you, I hope you had a brilliant weekend and that your week is going to be fabulous. And I look forward to speaking to you all in my next video. Do take care of yourselves. And that's about it from me. Bye-bye for now.